I gotta get some new records, man.
That was your one responsibility. You said you had it.
All my records got ruined in Sandy.
Now you have.
I used to DJ.
Now you have. Now you have mad records.
Talk about that next
You
show.
have mad records now.
We are rolling.
RWTW. All my records got ruined in Sandy. Now you're a DJ.
They did. Ask Joe Beef.
You know what?
Say, hey, what happened to all Justin's records?
A lot of vinyl.
Just say that. Ask him. What's up, everybody? We are here, episode 12, RWTW TV. Big day. I'm introing 12 because that was my number throughout my entire career, ending at the end of college. So, special show for me. It's good, brother.
That's how we're gonna start this thing.
Huh?
We're gonna start this thing talking about your career.
Yeah.
Okay.
I started with the number 12. I ended with the number 12. It's big.
I'm not gonna do this with you today.
Let me ask you this: at what point are we gonna stop celebrating the number of our shit? Like, since 3, we were like, yo, here we are, 4.
Well, I'll be what the number of our
Like our shit, like every.
Listen, everyone want to be the last one, so I'm surprised when we have another one. I'm celebrating it. I'm like,
I got you.
woo.
I agree. I don't think we should stop. We should treat it.
Tune in the next one will be like 13.
You know
listen,
what?
I'm excited.
Kayla, we need a cake every week.
12, just write it in with the finger with the frosting. 12, 13. Yes, episode 12, man. 12, that's a lot.
How you doing, man?
I'm good.
A lot of hoops action this week. A lot going on.
Yeah, I got my own shit going on, man. I'm still training for this marathon.
That's right. How's it going? You actually doing?
I ran 7 miles on Sunday. I started not feeling well about 2 miles in.
Because I see you posting
your
pictures of your progress, but is there a way Nike can timestamp those? Like the newspaper, you can't fake the cover of today's newspaper.
How could I fake a run?
I mean, you could. I mean,
how could I fake a run?
I could get a designer to put a
You think I'm gonna go through that? I'm gonna Photoshop.
Just saying, I don't know.
I'm showing my route. I'm running, man.
Okay. Your route. Oh, that's what that is. Your route.
Yeah, you show the route, shows your pace, all that. I'm running. I ran 7 miles. I got 8 miles on Sunday. I actually, before we get into the actual show, shout out to our boy David Creech. I convinced him to do the race with us.
Is he doing it?
So Creech
what's
is
good?
doing the Cleveland Half Marathon.
Great news. I'll be there too. I'm just not running. I'm going to be cheering you guys on. Big time. I'll bring a sign for each one of you guys.
How do you think I got him? How do you think I convinced him to do the race?
The horseshoe.
And what's the horseshoe for those that don't know?
It's a place you go hang out.
Leave it at that. You can look it up, man. Yeah. The horseshoe in Cleveland.
TVs,
Yeah. It's a little place to hang out.
It's nice, man. But listen, man, we are one day off a big, huge, monumental day for you, man. Your 1-year anniversary of your company.
Yes. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's funny, I was talking to one of my partners, to Maverick Carter. What up, Mav? And I sent him a note, and I'm like, hey, tomorrow's our 1-year anniversary. And he was like, no way it's that fast, it happened, whatnot. And it's been a blur, it's been a lot of fun, and we're excited, and I can honestly say I'm just as hungry and excited today as I was a year ago today. So
yeah, I mean, I cannot believe that you said the same thing. You said it to me, and I was like, wait, what? No, There's no way.
Yep.
So time flies. They say time flies when you're having fun, man.
Or working yourself to the bone.
But I mean, interesting segue into our show today, right? You just celebrated your 1-year anniversary at Robot. We will be coming up on our 5-year anniversary of Game 7 this year.
5.
And props to you because you celebrated it. I will say I have never, the first 3 years, then Greg, like the day after, a couple days after, I was like, hey, it was just anniversary, so I never
just
even.
Snuck up on you? Yep.
Which isn't a good thing, right? So this year we're actually
You're busy
it's 5,
actually doing
right?
work.
It's 5, it's the nickel. We're gonna celebrate it, but props to you for celebrating it with the team.
Listen, I don't take any of them for granted. Like we were just joking on the intro, talking about how we celebrate each show. Number 8, number 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't take any of this shit for granted. I don't take the show for granted. I don't take being able to open up the keys or the door to my business. I don't.
When you want.
Yeah, listen, man. I've been on the other side of that coin when there was no work, when you had to figure it out, So I'll never forget those days, and I won't take it for granted ever. So I'm going to celebrate every win. Tomorrow I'll celebrate my year and 2-day anniversary. So
as you should.
Absolutely.
As you should. But I mean, everybody, you guys do amazing work. The things you've done in a 12-month time period are pretty incredible. A lot more to come. But I think, an interesting thing about, starting your own business and entrepreneurship is, most people that are referred to as entrepreneurs or have a platform to speak about it are successful, right, on some level. And not to say, I'm pretty sure every entrepreneur, anybody who does that has that kind of, it's in their blood, it's in their DNA, it's something they love to do and have probably failed a few times, if not more times along the way on their path to achieving those successes. But as big and as special as it is, right, I feel like people don't really talk about the challenges as much as they should, right? So I think in our short time, we discussed a lot of sports, we discussed a lot of business stuff, and to be honest, the reaction I get the most from people is on on this stuff when we're talking about our businesses and our careers. So I wanted to just spend a little bit of time talking about the successes are there, they're there often and in a big way, but they come with their challenges.
Yeah, look, I think it's funny because that's probably what I get asked the most about as well on social media. And for me, honestly, I think a lot of people are in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur, right? I think a lot of people are in love with the idea of being their quote unquote own boss and calling the shots and all that stuff. And, people don't realize how difficult it is, how difficult it is, how difficult the landscape is of business and how difficult the commitment is. It's something I don't take lightly. I look at, even me in my situation, I have a much smaller team than you do, but you don't realize that being an entrepreneur, you're responsible for people. Yeah. I spend a lot of my time, my daily time, I'm responsible for a team. If we can't pay the bills and we can't make payroll, people's rent doesn't get paid. That's a huge responsibility. Yeah. So, I always say that. I always say I think people are in love with the idea of what an
that's
entrepreneur
the biggest
is.
opportunity. I mean, that's the biggest challenge.
Yep.
The biggest, and there's a million of them, but I don't know about you, but there's that, like, I fear that the most. You have people that rely on you, and they're active participants in the success. So I don't want to say that, but end of the day, it falls on you to make sure that that business is successful, that business is set up to grow, and that everybody on your team is able to grow with you.
Yep.
So. It's a huge responsibility, and it's it's stressful.
Yeah, it's one of those, and we'll touch on a couple of these topics in our do's and don'ts later. But one of the things I think people have the most difficulty dealing with is the lack of security. Right? When you're working, at whatever your job is, great company, great brand, or whatever it may be. You know that check's coming the 1st and the 15th, or every Friday, or whenever it comes. And there's a lot of jobs you can kind of coast. You can be terrible at your job for a year before they realize you're terrible and get you up out of there, Yeah. There's something to me about, in the true definition, true spirit of being an entrepreneur, of knowing that you eat what you kill.
Yep.
And, there's something about that it's literally the first thing on my mind when I wake up, besides my family, and the last thing on my mind when I go to sleep. I'm thinking about how I can further advance the company and how I can further advance our opportunities and leverage our relationships and things of that nature. That scares the hell out of a lot of people. And it scares the hell out of me.
It's scary, but that's also the scary thing about what you just said, but is also something I like the most about it is, when you're a true entrepreneur and you haven't taken on, partners or bigger holding companies, it is instant, like the feedback, or the response to something, or the success, or the failure to anything, a pitch, a meeting, a call, it instantly, and there's no, it doesn't have to get through the matrix before you it's an issue and you kind of realize it. And I actually like that because you're able to adjust and to move quickly, and that's either a great thing, you can turn it into a positive and an opportunity, and grow from it, or it can kind of, you cannot, and it can put you out of business.
Yeah, it's like, a good friend of the show, Omar, Omar Johnson, what up,
OJ.
From Beats by Dre, he once said something to me he said two things to me that ring true to this day. And one was, he said, you're not a boss or a leader until you can have very difficult conversations and make very difficult decisions.
Yep.
Right? When it's all good and everything's fine, that's easy. Anyone can do that. Anyone can have great conversations. Hey, you're hired. Hey, you have a bonus. Hey, I'm promoting you. When you need to have real conversations like, hey, I might need to let you go, or hey, you need to get your shit together. Those types of things, that's what really defines a leader and a boss. And I think another one is, which rings true day in and day out for me, is there's no safety net when you're running a business. And what I mean by that is like, and I have partners, obviously, and I have the pleasure of having great partners, but for the most part, and even with us, even with the three of us, the buck stops with you. So there are decisions that directly impact your clients, directly impact your company, directly impact your employees that you're making the call on. And you have to be A, knowledgeable enough, and B, self-confident enough to make those decisions and be able to live with them.
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing. That's not a small responsibility for people to have.
No, but again, and I think that's, you either have it or you don't, right? Like, and it's the basketball analogy, right? You got 4 teammates on the court. You're down 2. Like, do you want the rock, and what are you going to do with it? And it's like, when you're an entrepreneur, that's the mindset every minute of every day. And if you don't like that, and you don't thrive in that kind of environment, then it's definitely not for you.
So let me ask you this: let's talk about you getting into the game and to making the decision to become an entrepreneur. Kind of what the short version led up to that, and kind of what your thinking and your mindset was when you finally decided to make that a reality.
I mean, I don't so much have one clear-cut moment. I think it was always something I knew I wanted to do. I think, first and foremost, my father runs, family business. Has been in our, family for 3 generations. So it's what I saw growing up from him. And, I'd say more than, the positives were, had a good life. We weren't not rich, but, my dad worked, tremendously hard. So, I probably more saw the negatives of kind of owning your own business from just what it means for you personally, and especially if you have a family. But it's something I always knew, like, listen, I think you can trace it back to when you're a kid. Like, it would snow, I'd be out there shoveling all day to try and make $140. And the next time it snowed, I'd try and beat, so I think when you trace it back is like, if you're, and I talk about it all the time in my neighborhood, is like, it snows, not one kid comes to the door. And my driveway I'd probably have to pay somebody $60, probably more. But like, nobody even does it anymore. So I think, not to get super duper, cerebral with it. I think
I'm gonna be at your house next time it snows, shoveling. $80, man. $80, fill up a gas tank.
No, but I think you can trace it back that far. Like, if you weren't doing those things, if you look back and you weren't doing those things to try and make a buck, you're probably not gonna be, you're probably not an entrepreneur, and you're not gonna be successful, right? Like, you just don't turn that on one day, right? Like, people, I remember you used to hit me, the dude that used to, upload the songs on your iTunes and shit. And like, dude had a job running around hustling, trying to make an extra $20. Like, if you don't have that gear and that mentality, you're not going to do it. So again, I just think it was something that was always, ingrained in me. But fast forward to, to kind of where I think it really started to take shape was in college. I went to a school called RPI, Art Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and that was the first moment where I was surrounded with people that were day in, day out, minute in, minute out, trying to innovate and invent, and these are people that were engineers. I was in the business school, but like, you were entrenched in that culture, right? And I think you also started to see people that were in school, the first time it messed me up was a kid that we went to school with that, I forget exactly what the hell it was, but it was, some internet software thing. He was still going to school and had started this thing and sold it. And I was like, kid sitting next to me in class is probably, a millionaire right now.
He clearly was paying attention a little more than you were in class.
Again, I think it goes back to he just had it. I don't think he learned it.
No, absolutely.
But again, that was a big moment where I was like, you can really, if you want to do something, you just gotta figure it out and go get it.
But
right?
once you got to that moment, what was that process like for you? And you were like, you know what, I want to do this. I want to take a shot at it.
I
think you've talked about the mindset of either you have it or you don't. But for you specifically, what was that?
For me, it was three clear defining moments. Right, I was when I came out of college, I was running basketball camps and clinics in New York, and a couple of buddies of mine were talking about starting this basketball magazine. Knew nothing about it. They were launching it, and I was like, yeah, I want to help you guys. I saw a lane for there was nobody really kind of owning and running kind of the business side and the business development side of the publication. No experience, I jumped in and did it, and had some real success pretty quickly. And I think that was like the first taste of blood for me, where, wow, like this thing, not only is it an idea, came from an idea to something that's, printed on paper in people's hands that, people in the industry are respecting. So that was the moment when I realized there was a lane for that publication. I left my day job. I bartended at night. I ran the magazine.
Remember, I actually visited you a couple of times. You were bartending.
Yeah.
Heavy pour, too.
Heavy pour.
Solid.
Metro 53.
Solid,
man.
yeah, solid.
Midtown, but no, I mean, that was like, to me, that was the, you taste the blood, and then at that point, you're doing whatever you have to do to stay there. Like, I knew at that point I would never go back to having a 9-to-5.
What was your biggest challenge, your first initial biggest challenge when you made that decision to become an entrepreneur or start your own business?
I think I saw pretty quickly that it takes over your life. When you make that decision, there is no, you can find pockets of time to do other things, but you're never off, right? And if there's no, probably until recently, like, I didn't take a vacation for damn near 10 years, more than like a day or two here or there, but there's no turning it off. And that was probably the biggest challenge. Whether you have a girlfriend or what, like, it affects you immediately and even though you're physically there, like, right, your mind's like people, the people that are around you know that, right? And I think for me, my biggest challenge was, and even until recently, like, it was really hard for me to be in the moment outside of the context of work, because that's what it took. And once you make that jump, you can't, like, you're in it. There's no other choice. So I think that was really the biggest challenge off the jump was, realizing how it is going to impact, your life minute to minute, day to day.
And I think that's for me, it's one of those where, I go back to what I said of people falling in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur. And I tell people, you would think now that I'm using air quotes for those of you listening to this podcast, now that I'm my own boss, that, you could take it easy and work less. I've never worked harder in my life.
Look, everybody falls in love. Yeah, everybody
like,
falls in love with the, like, hey, I can do what I want, make the decisions I want. And that's cool if you happen to be an entrepreneur and you can run a business and it's only you and nobody else depends on you, yeah, maybe you can do that and you're going to be able to survive. But if you're going to be successful and you have people under you, you can't do that.
See, it's funny, at least, your background and your journey to becoming an entrepreneur, I think, was set up nicely for you. And what I mean by that is it transitioned smoothly from the magazine to kind of doing
it was a very progressive,
right,
one thing opened the door to another thing. And, it was, I wasn't traditional, but the flow of it was, was do something, capitalize on it. While that's happening, another door is kind of open, and it's like, I'm going to go in that door. I know the very different path for you.
Yeah, I was the complete opposite. I was an entrepreneurial spirit working a corporate job, which wasn't necessarily always the easiest thing to do. I agree with you in one main thing you said, and a couple of things, but one jumps out at me is you either have it or you don't, right? And even when I was working, my career has been fairly well documented. I worked at Nike for a while, and I worked at Beats by Dre, and you know, I'll tell anyone that listens, Nike's one of the greatest companies in the world, but it's also a lot more corporate than you think it is, just in terms of, they don't call it the matrix for nothing, right? So having an entrepreneurial spirit at times would get me slapped on the wrist. And working there wasn't, at time, I mean, it was great, one of the greatest experiences in my career, in my life. I had an amazing time there. I still have great friends there. I think it's, like I said, one of the greatest brands in the world, if not the greatest. But I knew early on that I wanted to do other things, right? And I think for me, I've always just subscribed to the notion of, if you're gonna bust your ass, you're gonna kill yourself working, it might as well be for something you're building for yourself, right?
Yep.
That doesn't mean you have to choose a path where it's like, I'm anti the machine, anti-corporate. So my clients and partners are some of those companies we just talked about, you know? So it's not a negative, I just think for me, you know, it really was a pivotal moment for me where I knew I wanted to do bigger things and challenge myself, and some would argue you can't do bigger things than Nike. I mean, people looked at me like I was insane when I left Nike. Yeah. You know, and I went to Beats, and Beats at the time was sort of a startup, if you can call a $1 billion company a startup, but they were a startup, and the mentality was hustle and grind and all that, so I think it was the perfect place for me. And I told everyone, look, I needed, you know, it's funny, I was talking to Daryl Jones, who works at Nike, right, and who's been like a mentor to me in my career, and he called and checked on me probably 2 months into me leaving Beats by Dre and starting my own company. And he was like, how's it going? And I'm like, oh man, it's going great, I love it. Like, I'm excited every single day. I said, I should have did this 6 years ago. And he laughed, and he was like, you weren't ready 6 years ago. And he said it joking if you know him, but you know, the meaning, if you double click on it, was I needed all of those experiences. I needed my wins. We've talked about that. I needed my losses, maybe even more so than the wins.
Yeah, you need your losses more than you need your wins.
I needed all of those experiences. And if you can trace it back to, you know, we've talked about how we worked at Dime together, you know, so if I don't work at Dime, I can't get that Nike job. I'm just not qualified to get it. Yep. If I don't work at Nike, I can't get the role I work at. Let me back up. If I don't work at Nike, I don't have the relationship I have with some of the people I have now. If I don't work at Nike, I can't get that job and that role at Beats. If I don't work at Beats, I can't start my own. You know, so it all literally, you may not realize it at the time, and you may not see the process or the meaning or the importance or the significance of some of the stuff you're doing, but it all plays a role in that next move and that next step.
Yeah, and we joke about it. I joke about it with you, but like, you know, at the point too where even back up before that, when I was leaving Bounce to go to Dime, and you were still doing your basketball stuff. You know, I told you, I was like, yo, you should do, like, take over Bounce for me. Like, and you're like, I can't do that, I don't know it. And I'm like, yo, like, and again, to me, this was, I knew you had, like, that DNA of, like, the hustle and the entrepreneurialism and, like, you know, the stuff that you had that you can't teach was there, right? Like, you can learn, you're like, well, I don't know, you could learn a rate card, you could learn the, you know, the lingo and slang for selling ads and publishing a magazine. And you know, but you were a perfect candidate to jump in and just do that. And again, I think at that time, you just didn't, you know, it's a scary proposition. Well, so even that is a, like, although you don't see it, that's that entrepreneurial mentality where you're like, you know what, I am going to take that leap out of, you know, playing ball and just kind of existing in the basketball world to the business side of that world.
Well, I think it's spot on. You know, one thing I've noticed, whether it's been in my career or other people, other entrepreneurs or people I've had the, you know, pleasure of working with or close to, is, you know, at times we're our own worst enemy. And what I mean by that is we set the bar so high for ourselves that we don't believe in going to a job that at the time may be a little too big for us. And you can grow into it, right? You can learn it. Our mindset is, or my mindset was, if I can't go in and kill that job immediately, I'm not qualified for it, right? And I remember, you know, I joke about it now, but I remember when I applied for the Nike job, and actually someone at Nike reached out and was like, hey, there's this job opening, I think you'd be perfect for it. And I went to you, we were working together at Dime Magazine, and I was like, hey, look at this job description, you know, what do you think? And you're like, yo, you should totally do that, you could do it, you'd kill it. I'm like, I don't even understand half of the shit they're talking about.
Other than you don't know how to use email or Excel or Word. I'll teach you that though.
But I was like, I don't even know like what are they talking about? What's out of home mean?
That's just the jargon, you know.
But you know what I'm saying? But it's like, and when you break it down, you're like, you know what, I can do that. You know, if not, I can learn it really quickly, or I may not have some of those skills, but the skills I am bringing to the table are more important than some of the stuff.
You have the unteachable stuff, the intangible. intangibles
Right.
that you can't learn, and that to me that's the most important thing.
But I say that to say, you know, I think at times we talk ourselves out of opportunities.
Yeah.
Right? I think, you know, and this is a great segue into, you know, do's and don'ts, you know, shortly, but, you know, we have a mutual friend, I won't say the name, but we had a mutual friend that was talking about starting a hat company. And I was on him for years, like, start the hat company, why don't you do it? And he looked at me one time, I was like, I don't have money for a store. I was like, store? You have a laptop.
Yeah.
Like, what do you know what I'm saying?
Nowadays you don't need a
right?
store.
And I think it's that. I think we set the bar so high that people always think.
no perfect time.
Right.
You know.
So just, we talked about, you know, kind of the journey of how, you know, you and I came to the decision or to the moment in our careers and becoming entrepreneurs or wanting to take that leap. Let's talk about a couple of specifics on, you know, maybe difficulties or challenges, we'll call them. And once entrepreneurs make that decision, challenges that you can expect or we've kind of encountered along the way in becoming entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and this list goes on and on, but I think there's 3 that we're going to talk about right now that
Because I could give you like 36.
Yeah, I mean, it's an endless list, but I think the biggest challenge is just time, right? And in 2 instances, like, you know, there's times where I wish there was 30 hours in a day. You're not going to be able to change that. There's just not enough time to do the things you need to do. And then second to that is really just the balance of your time, right? Unless you are just a hermit and you have no family, you know, or friends, there's sacrifice there from a time standpoint and where your kind of, you know, your energy and your time goes. Which is, you know, again, a really big challenge. And
I've tried to figure out, and it's good and bad. You can look at it however you want to look at it. There is no balance for me. It's just I try to figure out how work plays nice with life and life plays nice with work, and that's kind of the commitment, in my personal opinion, or in my career, that it's taken to kind of attain a certain level of success.
Yeah, and you have to be able to weave those things in and out of each other, and they have to be able to coexist. But you still have to pay attention to, again, for me, you know, family is very important to me. I have a lot of great friends, and it's a constant challenge and a battle to make sure that I'm actually giving that time and giving a time where you're not just a body, like, and your mind's somewhere else. You're mentally present. You're there. You're able to enjoy moments and kind of step away from. You know, the grind, you need it. No,
I hear you. I agree 1,000% on that. I think one challenge for me that I encountered or realized quickly, I'm talking about like within the day I decided to kind of, you know, start my own business, is the back end, right? The back end of stuff. I think a lot of people, including myself, fall in love with, you know, it's your baby. You fall in love with the concept and the idea of you're going to start this business because you're good at it, you know it, you love it, you're passionate about it, you have an expertise in it. That's probably a third of what you need to start a business.
Yeah, maybe even less. Yeah, and put it in, you know, you start a t-shirt company. You have a dope design and it's a great idea and a great concept and people love it, and somehow, whether you're trying or not, you get your first order with a store. Now what the are you gonna do?
Well, Jeff Staple tells a great idea about, you ever heard Jeff Staple's?
There's the production, there's the fulfillment.
But you ever hear Jeff Staple's story about his first order? So he started a t-shirt, he started doing t-shirts, just printing because he was at school. And Jeff, call bullshit on this if I've messed anything up. We got to get Jeff on the show, actually.
Yeah, he's on the list.
But basically, you know, the short end of
I think he's jumping out of a helicopter in Japan.
Probably, right?
Snowboarding right now.
Or whatever. But the short version of it is, I'm paraphrasing, is he printed a couple, like literally like a couple dozen t-shirts. Someone saw it from like Asia or something, was like, hey, love it. I want 1,500 shirts. And he was like, cool, but like, I can't afford to print 1,500 shirts. Like, can you give me 50% up front so I can at least pay to get them done? Yeah. The guy pays him, he gets them done, the shirts are completely f***ed. So the guy's coming to pick them up, and the shirts are wrong. He said he could do 2 things. He could lie to him and make something up, or he could come clean. And he tells the guy, hey, listen, I messed them up. Can you pay me the second half so I can fix these? And then it all worked out for him. But my point is, that's not stuff you think about. You think about, you know, I have this great idea. I'm going to start a T-shirt company. That's just an idea. Like the saying goes, an idea is just that. It's just
you're
an
a
idea.
consultant. You pitch an idea, and somebody loves it, and you do it. Now you gotta invoice for it.
Yep.
You gotta have
And one thing I learned quickly is when you invoice, that's just the first step in it. Like some companies are 45, 60 days till you see any money.
If you believe in yourself and you have a good business, whether you're an individual or you have a little bit of a team around you, whatever you do, if you plan on being successful, those successes, again, the back end of what it's going to take to fulfill those is a lot of times not really anticipated properly, and you have to make sure you're set up to be able to,
But listen,
to deliver on
we can't overstate this enough. No matter how big your dream, vision, idea may be, and it may be amazing, if you don't take care of back end, that'll bury a business. It'll kill a dream quicker than anything else. This next one you kind of talked about, which was a big one for you in terms of challenges, was burnout.
The burnout, man.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. And everybody can claim they're Superman, and the grind don't stop, and always on.
Everyone on Instagram's like, I don't sleep. I count money. Everyone's got a.
Until the day that we're robots sitting here.
Yep.
And not, you're human, right? And there's a burnout, and just the grind and the time and the commitment it takes to run your own business. Everybody has that point, and you just have to know that there is a point that will happen. You got to know it. You got to be able to be real with yourself and sense when it's coming. And hopefully, you're a good enough businessman to make sure you have the pieces around you to make sure that when that happens, you're able to step away. Whether that's for an hour to go to the movies, a week, a month sabbatical, whatever that is in your situation.
Speaking of which, not to cut you off, but you're a huge fan of hitting a movie by yourself.
Movie is my biggest.
If we're on the road and you have a down 90 minutes between meetings, you're like, hey, you know what? I heard Avengers just came out. I'm gonna go hit that.
It's basically it's a 2-hour vacation. Think about it. You go in, you turn your phone off. You're not going away for a week, so it's like, oh my God, what can happen? It's a 2-hour thing where I really believe, for me, that's one of the few moments I can turn it off, because I know I know nothing that bad could have happened in 2 hours. I'm coming out, I'm gonna turn my phone back on, and maybe there's but to me, it's a mini little micro vacation.
Well, when you say that, listen, for you guys listening or watching, when he says that, it's not bullshit. He means that we've been in Miami and it's like, oh man, we got 2 hours, I'm gonna go lay it down or whatever. I'll meet you down in the lobby at 5. I come down at 5, he's like, oh man, that Bane, he's a bad man. I'm like, what? You're like, yeah, just caught Batman. You gotta see this fight. I'm like, what in the, you love your movie. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
but the burnout, man, it's a real thing, and I can talk about it for days. I have been there personally, and again, thankfully I've had great people around me. I've been able to kind of, step back, realign, get more, whatever it was in that moment. But again, I think that you need to know that that's a real thing, right? Because if you don't, you're either gonna burn yourself out and be done, and in the process, not run your business properly, or you're move yourself away from what you're good at. If you're a creative and you just stay in that space, and that's how your business starts, you're quickly, if you don't have all the money in the world, you are quickly going to get inundated with the minutia of running a company, right? And for anybody who's a creative, that's the worst thing that can happen to you, because you're not doing what got you to where you are.
No, I think, and I'll keep this short, the one thing you said that really resonates with me and is true, is you can never have enough good people around you.
Yeah,
right. I think that's one that can combat the burnout, when it's a dangerous place when you feel you can't step away from your business for an hour, for a day, for a week. And some people may say, there may be a young entrepreneur there who's starting a business and saying, hey, you know what? Well, I just started my business. I can't afford to have 5 employees. Or that. You know what? Take on a partner.
Yeah.
Take on someone that's great, that believes in your vision, that you guys have like-minded, ideas or goals, and say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna take you on as a partner. We're gonna get money in the long run, and have someone there that can kind of shoulder the load with you. I think, and this is a topic for another day, but one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given Someone told me, you know, it's better to own 10% of something really big than 100% of something really small. Yeah. You know, so
it's true on a lot of levels, on a financial level, on a responsibility level. So
absolutely. So
again, that list can go on. I'm sure we'll come back to this a million times before we, you know, close the chapter on our podcast, which is, you know, hopefully years from now.
Decades.
Because I'm not going to get burnt out.
Nah, listen.
I have great people around me.
You don't work hard enough to be burnt out.
You're crazy. Perfect segue into do's and don'ts, people.
Do's and don'ts. Best part of the show. Today's topic, you know, blends in nicely.
And you're going to go into the first do because you pushed, more than anybody, you pushed me to do this.
It's about time. Eric, our producer, I want to make sure you play that back and just play that a couple times.
More than anybody, you pushed me to do this. More than anybody, you pushed me to do this.
More than anybody, you pushed me to do this.
I pushed him to do this.
Yeah, it's only been a few times.
About time I have him on camera to actually admit, you know, the role I've played in it. First do. First do is a very simple one. You'll hear me say this a couple of times. And you've heard us speak about it on the show is, you know, take the leap. You know, you need to kind of just trust that there's a step there. You need to trust, although you may not see it, that trust in your vision, take that leap. You know, having, taking that leap to becoming an entrepreneur is sort of like, for any of you out there that have children, it's like, you'll never have enough money. You'll always want to have a little more money. You want to live in a little bit of a bigger house. You want to be a little more stable. It's the same thing with starting your own business. Take that leap, get started. The only regret I have in starting my own business is that I didn't start it 2 years earlier.
That's the hardest step, yeah.
Take that leap.
Me too. First don't.
That's
nice segue. Don't wait until you're ready. And when I say ready, meaning like referencing back to our first do, take the leap. Like you need to prepare, you need to do your homework, you need to, you know, make smart decisions, but don't wait until, you know, the handbook says you're ready.
You'll never be ready. You'll never be ready enough.
You'll never be ready. That's why. And that same thing, people who talk about, hey, I'm thinking about having a kid, I don't think I'm ready. You're never ready for that.
Right.
As much as you think you are, you're not. You got to just do it.
Just do it.
Yep.
Nice plug. Shout out to our friends at the Swoosh.
Swoosh.
Second do. Second do, you would think that more people would understand this and follow it. But it's again, another simple one is have an expertise. You know, have an expert. It's common sense. If you're going to start a business, it should be in something you have an expertise in.
Yeah, something that you believe you are better than anybody at. And you have some backup, you have like a real portfolio or a resume to prove it.
Right. It's not like you come to me today and you're like, hey, what's going on? Ah, man, I'm just starting this new business. Oh, what are you doing? Yeah, I'm going to fix Ferraris. Hey, there's a lot of money in that, you know, Ferrari mechanic. I don't even know how to drive stick.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like have an expertise. Make sure and it could be anything. We've talked about this before. Like be passionate about what you do. And I have faith that if you're passionate, it'll show in the results of what you do. So have an expertise. If you're going to make an investment, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, anything else you could think. If you're going to make an investment, a significant investment, make sure you're an expert or at least have a strong expertise in whatever that field is.
Yep.
Second don't.
Do not fake the funk.
What exactly does that mean? Do not fake the funk.
Don't fake the funk, man. You gotta have a real track record. You gotta be really good at what you do because again, if you're, you know, trying to do business with anybody who is successful and knows what they're doing, they're gonna press you on why you. And they will ask you, why you and not somebody else? Why you and not this guy, right? So they'll press you. You have to have that real area expertise and that background and that body of work to prove that, you know, you can do it, and you will get exposed if you fake the funk, man.
And again, going off something that I touched on earlier is, you know, you may have this vision of being, you know, starting your company and being a great marketer, but you may not be great with numbers, or you may not be great with whatever. Bring people, surround yourself with people. Yeah. You know, it's like, again, we use a lot of basketball analogies on the show, but it's, you know, you don't need a team of 5 point guards. You know what I'm saying? You need someone that's going to set picks. You need someone that's going to rebound. You need someone that's going to play defense. You know, just so happens I could do all of those as a ball player. You know, just so happens I was that talented I could do multiple things. Neither here nor there. You know, but don't fake the funk. You know, keep it real. you will get exposed, and
Don't
there's
start
nothing.
a social media company
Yeah.
and go try and pitch a client. What have you done? Well, Foot Locker retweeted me once.
Yeah, nah,
Like, you can't.
nah.
You have to have.
Nah.
Like,
I did an interview. You know what? I'm not gonna blow them up. I'm gonna leave that out here.
Yeah, don't do
okay.
that. Don't do that.
Don't fake the funk. Third dude. Another one. I think it's seems pretty common sense, but have a plan. You can't expect other people to buy into your vision or your plan if you don't have a vision or a plan. You know, have a plan, and that's not to say it needs to be completely fleshed out step by step, but have a plan on what you're gonna start, where you want to get, and kind of what your thought process is and how you're gonna get there. And
Build
you can
the
fill
plan,
in,
work the plan.
Yeah,
man.
you can fill in the
Simple.
blanks as you get there and this stuff. You don't have to have it all figured out, but you have to have a plan.
Yeah.
How many times have you spoken to someone that's told you, you know, they want to start this company, they want to start this business, they have this vision, and when you ask them what it is, they have a difficult time explaining it to you.
Yeah.
If you can't sell me on what your vision or your plan is, how am I going to buy into it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so have a plan. Simple enough.
Yep. Third don't. Do not, as you are building out this plan, or if you don't have a plan, either way, do not leave out the numbers.
This is a
right?
big one.
If
Explain that. Please explain that. Say it again, actually.
Don't leave out the numbers, man.
Yep.
You got to pay attention to the numbers. The numbers have to be a part of your plan. Again, if you are, you know, a real entrepreneur and doing real things. So plenty of people have an entrepreneur, and you know, if you have a real business, you need to. The numbers need to be a part of your business.
When you say numbers, just like what? Give us an example. It doesn't have to be everything, but an example of.
How are you going to make money, right? Like, you know, you have to start from the beginning. Whether you need to raise money or not, you need to pretend you need to go and get funds, and you need to have a business plan. Has not, because as much as all the fluff, hey, we're this, we're that, here's what we do, boom, 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 great. The one thing those guys are going to look at is your numbers. How are you making money? What are you selling? What are you producing? What are the margins? You know,
And
what
even,
is growth out
and
like?
even if you don't have money and need to get money, you still need to have a plan on how you can pay that money back, or what your revenue plan, like numbers. Numbers are important. Don't leave that out.
Super important.
Don't keep it to the sexy part of, man, we have this vision, and we're going to do this and that and that. What are the numbers?
Yep.
Okay. Fourth do. You know, this is one that, you know, a lot of young entrepreneurs make, is they're so excited with the concept and idea of starting a new business that they only think about today and maybe tomorrow, but they don't think endgame. And by endgame, I mean, you know, what do you want this company of yours to look like in 5 years, 10 years? And you don't need to have it all figured out, but you need to think about it, because there's steps that you take at the beginning which will directly impact how you set yourself up towards the end game. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You know, I think, you know, for me, when I was, that was the first question my partners and I discussed or asked each other, was like, okay, what's the end game? Do we have the same goal? What are we thinking? And it may change between now and then, but at least we're all pointing towards the same target.
Yeah, and I always use a sports analogy. It's like, if you know your team and you're trying to, you know, you are you need to win a chip this year, you're going to make decisions and put pieces around you very differently than if you're trying to build your franchise from the bottom up. Like, so if you know what your end game is, like you said, every micro decision you make from the start is going to, you know, if you do it properly, is going to work back from that end game.
Agree.
So you got to think end game.
Agree. And think big. End game, think big. I mean, you know, what's the saying? You know, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you're still amongst the stars.
Yeah,
right?
but I don't want, if I'm an investor, I'm not at a point where I can throw my money around and invest in other people's vision, but I can certainly tell you when that does happen, I don't want somebody who thinks small.
Right.
I want somebody who, hey, I got this great business and it's just gonna be healthy.
It's gonna keep the lights
be around
on
for a
It's
long
gonna keep the
time.
light-
Like I have no interest in that.
Right, inspire me.
I want somebody who's thinking big, who's willing to take risks.
Absolutely. Think end game.
Fourth, don't. Think big. Don't let it scare you, man.
Wow.
Don't let the big idea scare you.
Sometimes the
Can't-
dream's too big. It scares you sometimes.
Yep. Can't do that.
Like I think we touched on this earlier. I think there's times when people talk themselves out of opportunities or out of, you know, business ventures or whatnot, where it's like, man, I'd love to do this, but damn, that'll be hard, or I don't know if I could do that or whatnot, you know, instead of.
And like I said, you need to really look at yourself, and if you're not that dude that's on the floor and wants the ball and wants to get fouled and be at the free throw line with no time on the clock, it's not for you.
I agree.
It's not for you.
I agree. Don't let the dream scare you, man.
Nope.
And I would challenge, if the dream doesn't scare you,
it's not the right dream.
not big enough. If the dream does not scare you, it's not a big enough dream.
100%.
If the dream doesn't keep you up at night, if the dream doesn't have you thinking about how can you reach that goal or that dream, it's not big enough.
Agreed. Fifth and final do,
Fifth
man.
and final do. You know, this is something I try to do not only in business but in my personal, is trust your gut. And I say that for a couple of reasons. I think more times than not, your gut is going to be right.
Yep.
Right? And in those few or rare occasions that it's not right, it's an easier pill to swallow. I can live with failures. I can live with things not working out if I followed my gut. What I can't live with is shit. I really wanted to do this and I didn't because I was scared because the dream maybe was too big.
Yep.
And I didn't do it and look how it worked out. I can live with failure as long as, you know, like I always say, you gather as much information as you can.
And you make the decision.
And you make the
Yep.
call and you live with however that plays out. And if it, more times than not, I honestly believe it's going to play out in your favor. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't, that's okay. That's part of the game. That's a lesson. That's one of those losses I talked about earlier.
You're usually right. You have to do it. And again, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to have those instincts. If you don't have those right gut instincts, you're probably not going to be around.
I make gut calls once a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my day-to-day business, and as a leader, your team is looking for you to do that. That's part of being a leader. You have to make some of those decisions. But again, make those decisions for the right reason. Follow your gut. More times than not, they're going to work out for you. And if they don't, that's okay too. It's just part of the process.
Yep.
Fifth and final
Fifth and final
don't, man.
don't,
This is might be the most important one out of all of them because I think people
Yes.
go into it with a perception. Fifth and final don't, Just.
Do not expect it to be easy. And we don't even need to elaborate on this because we've talked about, this whole show has really been about challenges.
Yep.
Don't expect it to be easy. And on the flip to that, expect it to be the hardest thing you have ever done in your life every day. Simple as that.
Agree. I think,
Every day comes a new set of challenges, you know.
and I think if you're doing it for the right reasons, and some of the things we've talked about before, it's a passion, it's an expertise. You're okay with it not being easy. It's part of the journey. It's part of the process, right? And you don't expect it to be easy. And you know, it makes the wins. You know, again, we always go to sports, but you look at the teams that have won championships coming off of losses. You look at the Miami Heat losing to Dallas and then coming back and winning. It's that much sweeter. You look at the Lakers losing to the Celtics. You look at the Pistons, you know. So you look at these championship teams, and it's the same thing in business. It's like it's not an easy thing. Nor do I want it to be easy. You know, you want easy, go do something easy. Yeah. You know, I think most things that are, you know, what's the saying? Most things that are great are not lightly won, right? So don't expect it to be easy. It's going to be difficult, and to your point, Just, it might be one of the most difficult things you've ever done.
It will be, I can promise you that.
So that was do's and don'ts.
12 in the books.
12 in the books.
I would like a special shout out.
Okay, go ahead.
To our man Nas. He's been riding with us from day one.
You were just talking shit that we need to get a new album.
We do, I know, but that's why I'm going to thank him for riding with us because we're going to have some more. We're going to, you know, he might not be around next week.
Before we go, one nugget, one piece of advice, and we've covered a lot for a young person out there that's thinking about starting his own t-shirt line, starting a hat line, starting a business, whatever. One gem, one piece of advice, and it may be something we've covered you want to reiterate. What are you telling this person that's listening out there that's trying to start their own business?
My biggest is, again, and I talked about it in the beginning, is that you got to look in the mirror, right? Like, if you think it's cool or you want to, you know, make a quick buck and you can't really look back at your life and say, you know what, like, I'm built for this. This is what I want to do. Don't do it. Like, you got to do your internal gut check. You got to do an internal audit. Look in the mirror, and you know, again, if that's a part of who you are, go for it. And I'll ride with you all day. But if you're not the dude who, you know, if you're sitting on your couch and not going to shovel the driveway, you're not the guy.
Great, love it. I think, you know, hopefully some of these things have been helpful for you guys. You have any questions, any feedback, hit us on our social media, RWTW TV. I've actually learned some things on this show.
We're going for a short one today.
Listen, man, we're passionate about this. So we're talking about stuff we care about and love and live. You know, hopefully it's been useful, and we made it through another show, man. So we'll see you guys signing off. RWTW TV, episode 12. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Peace.
Peace.